I am back with second cup of coffee and second video on these closing arguments. I dried my hair in between. So anyway, let's talk about Hank's closing arguments. But before I get there, I do want to read something that Alan Jackson said. I wrote it down verbatim. I could just play the video, but you know I love to hear myself talk. So here we go. I thought this was kind of the ultimate takeaway. He said to the jury, "You don't need the top experts in the country, but you had them. You don't need the top medical minds on the planet on this issue, but you had them." And he's right. The defense brought forth people who are top experts in these fields. And every single one of them said over and over and over again, John O'Keefe was not hit by a vehicle. John O'Keefe died of blunt force trauma. John O'Keefe fell and hit his head. He was straight up and he fell backwards. And what was it that made John go from a standing position to a fallback position? But let's get to Hank. Because here's old Hanky. Again, instead of trying to prosecute, he spends a good portion of his closing defending his witnesses. Jen McCabe made those Google searches because she was asked to. Karen Reed was yelling at her to Google hypothermia. That's why Jen did it. But my favorite was when he talked about Shannon Burgess. He wants us to think that Shannon Burgess was this expert that found everybody else overlooked it. The best experts in the country overlooked it, but it was Shannon Burgess that found that extra data stream, that extra chip inside the Lexus infotainment system. That is fantastic. Bravo, Shannon Burgess. But the problem was then he took whatever it told him and he just manipulated it to match whatever they already said was the story. The prosecution has been telling the story of Karen Reed killing John for 3.5 years. They've had all of this time to make it work with the data and the time and the information. They've had 3.5 years to hire the best. They could have had ARCA, but they know there isn't any experts, no matter how big the paycheck. They can't find any experts who will tell their story. There wasn't a single medical witness who got up on the witness stand and talked about John's arm, the injuries to John's arm, as being anything but being caused by a dog. There wasn't one single rebuttal witness. They had experts. He had people he could call to get up there and say, no, we don't think those are dog bites and scratches. He didn't call any of them because at that point, every single one of his witnesses was getting crushed under cross-examination. Hank couldn't call any of them. Because what Dr. Russell and Dr. Laposado had to say about those injuries on John's arm, it was irrefutable. There isn't anybody in their right mind that would think those injuries came from shards of taillight. It's implausible. Hank cannot point to one single prosecution witness that says, here's exactly what happened to John that night. Here's when he was hit. Here's how fast the car was going. Here's where he was standing. Here's the angle in which he was hit. Here's how he landed. Here's how we explain the temperature of the iPhone. He does not have one witness that will corroborate and tie all of this together with a bow. He doesn't. What he has is they argued. Karen left some really angry voicemails. And by the way, there was a bunch of her taillight found on the yard. And he's trying to take those things and make a ham sandwich out of them. It's not working, Hanky. There's a voicemail that Karen leaves where she's like, John, no one knows where you are. You need to call me. Hank twists that into, no one knows where you are because I killed you and I left you there. Well, if that were the case, if Karen did kill him and leave him on the lawn, there is probably at least 15 people that know where he is. Because there isn't any fucking way that 13 people come and go from that house and don't see him on the lawn. There's no way the video camera across the street and diagonal don't pick up the videos. No one knows where you are. Yeah, the fuck they would have if that had been the scenario. Every single one of them would have known where he was. If he had indeed been hit by Karen and he'd been left on the yard, every single one of them would have known where he was. But her taillight is all over the lawn. They can never explain how it broke. They never give you proof as to how it broke, when it broke, where it spread, where it landed, All you've got is didn't find it that morning. They didn't find it at 6 a.m. They didn't find it at 7 a.m. They didn't find it at 9 a.m. They found a couple of pieces at almost 6 p.m. And then magically, there were dozens of pieces found every single time Proctor or Yuri Bekinic or that lying bastard Chief Berkowitz drove by the house. Sure, her taillight was all over the lawn because you put it there. His closing arguments were filled with fluff. And I hope to God the jury sees through this. I mean, I just really, really hope the jury sees through this. There is so much reasonable doubt. They really need to find her not guilty. But I admit, I'm nervous. You just never know.